100 days passed without Menglong, and the industry learned something it had not expected to learn. Silence could be louder than presence. At first, the absence felt manageable. Schedules adjusted, mentions faded. A new rhythm was imposed. Power believed that time would do what control could not. It underestimated memory. The first 30 days were marked by restraint. People spoke carefully. Interviews avoided certain phrases. Public appearances were choreographed with an almost mechanical calm. Fab Shiki remained visible but altered. He smiled too long. He spoke too little. He arrived early and left abruptly. Those close to him noticed the change immediately. His posture shifted. His gaze lingered where it should not. He paused before answering questions he once handled effortlessly. It was not grief, it was calculation. By day 40, something else surfaced. Fab began appearing in places that made no sense. Events unrelated to his work. Gatherings with no cameras. Meetings that produced no announcements. He was seen entering buildings that had nothing to do with entertainment and exiting hours later alone. No explanations followed. The industry noticed. Rumors did not spread loudly. They seeped. Quiet exchanges. Side glances. Unfinished sentences. People began asking, not what happened to you, but why Fab was moving the way he was. Behavior reveals pressure before words ever do. By day 60, the inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. Fab contradicted himself in interviews, not in substance, but in timing. Statements shifted by hours. Appearances were canceled, then quietly restored. He praised transparency while avoiding direct questions. When asked about you, he did not deny connection. He deflected. That distinction mattered. Behind closed doors, contracts were revised. Clauses tightened. Non-disclosure agreements expanded in scope and duration. People were asked to sign documents that referenced events they claimed never occurred. Some refused. They vanished quietly from projects. The pattern was familiar now. The industry had learned from you what to watch for. Day 73 brought the first real crack. An off-camera audio clip surfaced briefly. Fab voice strained, not angry, but unsettled. He was asking someone why a timeline had been moved forward without notice. The response was muffled, but one word came through clearly: containment. The clip disappeared within minutes, but it had already been heard. Power responded by accelerating its schedule. Releases were pushed, appearances stacked. Fab was placed everywhere at once, as if saturation could overwrite suspicion. Instead, it amplified it. People began noticing how exhausted he looked, how carefully he avoided unscripted moments, how his hands clenched when names were mentioned unexpectedly. 100 days without you had not erased him. It had made him unavoidable. The industry itself began showing signs of strain. Projects stalled inexplicably. Funding approvals slowed. Entire campaigns were paused without explanation. Executives spoke of realignment while privately demanding reassurance. The machine that once moved smoothly was grinding. That was when the first dirty secret surfaced, not through leaks, but through absence. A long-standing archive quietly disappeared. Not content related to you, but adjacent material. Interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, industry retrospectives. History was being edited preemptively. People noticed because they had learned to look. The second secret followed quickly. A document circulated anonymously, outlining how narrative control was enforced through partnership pressure rather than censorship. How influence traveled sideways instead of downward. How silence was incentivized, not imposed. No names were listed. None were needed. Fab behavior shifted again. He withdrew from public view for 10 days. When he returned, he was different. Calmer. Too calm. He spoke about moving forward, about unity, about lessons learned. He did not mention you once. That omission was louder than any accusation. Behind him, the industry adjusted its posture, less aggressive, more cautious, like an animal that had been startled and was now listening for movement. You absence had become a measuring stick. Every decision was compared to before and after. Day 90 arrived quietly. A small group gathered somewhere unremarkable. No signs, no agenda. Just people who had watched the same patterns repeat too often to ignore. They spoke about you, not as a person, but as a moment. The moment when reaction replaced confidence. The moment when power stopped pretending it did not feel pressure. They spoke about Fab not as a villain, but as a signal. A man moving through a system that had begun to collapse inward. That distinction mattered. By day 100, the industry could no longer deny it. Things had changed. Not publicly, internally. The speed was gone. The certainty fractured. Decisions hesitated. Authority second-guessed itself. Yu Menglong absence had done what presence alone could not. It had exposed dependency. The industry needed compliance to function, and compliance was no longer automatic. Fab Shiki stood at the center of this, not as a mastermind, but as a reflection. His bizarre behavior was not madness or guilt. It was adaptation. He was adjusting to a world where silence no longer guaranteed safety, where association carried weight, where every movement was interpreted. Dirty secrets do not emerge all at once. They surface in fragments, in pauses, in revisions, in people behaving unlike themselves. The truth was not that Yu was gone. The truth was that the system had been forced to reveal how much it relied on him staying quiet. 100 days without Yu Menglong did not bring closure. It brought exposure. And exposure does not fade with time. It sharpens. After the 100th day, the industry did not recover. It adapted. Adaptation looked like calm on the surface and disorder underneath. Meetings multiplied while decisions shrank. Schedules filled, but outcomes blurred. People moved constantly, but nothing advanced. This was the aftermath Yu Menglong had unknowingly created. The most telling events were the smallest ones. A delayed handshake, a forgotten introduction, a meeting room booked twice by different departments that claimed no overlap. These were not accidents. They were symptoms. Fab Shiki began appearing again, but never in the same place twice. He avoided routines. He shifted entrances. He exited before applause settled. Cameras caught him scanning rooms instead of acknowledging crowds. Those watching understood the language. He was listening for echoes. One afternoon, a rehearsal was interrupted when a lighting cue triggered early. The projection behind the stage flashed a single frame that did not belong. It showed a corridor angle identical to one long discussed in whispers. The image vanished instantly. The official explanation cited a corrupted file. No one believed it. The room went quiet in a way that felt familiar. A silence that did not relax. A silence that waited. Backstage, Fab said nothing, but his hands trembled as he adjusted his jacket. That detail traveled faster than any statement. Soon after, a private workshop was canceled without notice. Participants arrived to locked doors. No explanation followed. The booking records later showed the event had never existed. People had proof that it did. The industry was now erasing in real time. Another strange event followed. An awards committee released a shortlist missing an expected name. Hours later, the name appeared without explanation. No correction was issued. No apology offered. The gap told its own story. Yu absence had trained people to read gaps. Behind closed doors, senior figures spoke about stabilization. They described a need to reduce unpredictability. They used phrases like narrative fatigue and public saturation. But the truth was simpler. Control was slipping. A leaked memo circulated briefly describing a new review layer added to all external communications. The layer was unnamed. Approval timelines doubled. Decisions bottlenecked. Speed had once been the system's strength. Now speed was its weakness. Fab behavior grew more constrained. He spoke in rehearsed arcs. He avoided personal language. He referenced teams and processes instead of experiences. When asked about influence, he smiled without warmth. That smile became its own headline. Another incident occurred at a charity function. Fab arrived late and left early. A donor asked publicly why schedules had become so unstable. The question was brushed aside, but cameras captured Fab's reaction. Not anger, recognition. He knew the question was not about schedules. It was about cracks. Meanwhile, smaller figures began distancing themselves. Assistants resigned quietly. Consultants declined renewals. People who once thrived in proximity to power chose anonymity instead. That shift mattered. Power depends on closeness. Distance weakens it. Yu absence continued to shape behavior in rooms he never entered. His name was not spoken, but his presence defined boundaries. People stopped joking freely. They avoided improvisation. They rehearsed sincerity. The industry had become careful to the point of paralysis. One night, a minor platform experienced a delay while posting routine content. The delay lasted only seconds. But during that window, a cached image appeared briefly. It showed Yu not performing, not speaking, just standing still. The image vanished. The platform claimed glitch. Users claimed memory. The story spread without captions. Fab was seen later that night leaving a meeting alone. He did not acknowledge waiting cameras. He walked faster than usual. His phone remained dark. Those watching understood. When truth collides with power, the aftermath is not explosion. It is exhaustion. Power grows tired of monitoring itself, and tired systems make mistakes. The final event of this phase came quietly. A long-standing partnership was dissolved without explanation. No conflict cited, no replacement announced. Just an ending. Those inside the industry knew why. Pressure had reached a point where proximity carried risk. Menglong absence had turned risk into a shared calculation. Fab stood at the edge of this recalibration, not as a villain and not as a hero. He was a figure navigating a collapsing equilibrium. His bizarre behavior was not mystery, it was survival. The industry dirty secrets were not hidden in files or confessions. They were visible in hesitation, in overcorrection, in people acting unlike themselves. Truth did not arrive loudly, it arrived persistently. And persistence had changed the rules. You was still gone. But the silence he left behind was now directing everything that followed. The weeks that followed did not bring resolution. They brought exposure in slow motion. The industry began to resemble a room full of mirrors where every movement reflected another angle no one had prepared for. The first noticeable change was how decisions were postponed, not canceled, not denied, simply delayed until urgency dissolved. Projects hovered in limbo, announcements were drafted and never released. Confidence was replaced by caution. People started calling it the waiting season. Fab Shiki adapted again. He reduced his public presence, but increased his visibility in private spaces. He was seen entering offices long after business hours. He exited through service doors instead of main entrances. He spoke more with gestures than words. Those who worked closely with him noticed a pattern. He repeated questions. He asked for confirmation even on trivial matters. He requested written summaries of conversations that once ended with a nod. Trust had become transactional. An unusual event unfolded during a live broadcast.